In this video, I'm going to review a plyometric training program, and it is a question I have received. And the idea is basically a father asks for his son, who's a basketball player and wants to increase his vertical. So this is the question. I let you read through it. I have covered the name as well as the name of the training program. That brings me to the first point. So I don't know the exact context, and we'll get into that later in this video. I also have to say there are many ways that lead to Rome. So there are training programs that I would not necessarily advise to follow, but that lead to results. So basically different approaches work. And I can only take you through my thought process, how I would analyze that training program and the advice I can give. So let's have a look at that program and start with the information we have. The sport is basketball. The goal is to increase the vertical jump, and the age of the athlete is 16 years of age, and it's a male. So if we look at the exercises, we have 9 different exercises and 3 sets of 25, with exception of exercise 7, with its 3 sets of 10 repetitions. Which brings me to the first question. Basically, we've spoken about energy systems before. In order for plyometrics to be successful, they need to utilize the ATP-CP system. The ATP-CP system provides energy for a very short period of time with a high amount of energy, but is, let's say, empty pretty quickly. If you're performing 25 repetitions, for sure you're not working in the ATP-CP system. So from that standpoint, my first question would be why the number of repetitions are so high. I would much rather advise lower repetitions. And if you want to increase volume, which is the next discussion point, probably think about more sets. As I mentioned, so the training volume. Exercise 2, 4, and 6, I don't really know what it is, but it seems they are not plyometric exercises. So which leaves us with exercise 1, 3, 5, 8, and 9, plus 7. And if we count that up, there's a plyometric training volume per session of 400 jumps. 400 jumps can be considered as extremely high. It is always a bit difficult to say how many jumps actually should be done. There are a few guidelines from Don Chu and also Radcliffe, and they tend to stay somewhere between 80 to 150 jumps. Again, I also know that these numbers are debatable, but it gives us a good indication that these 405 jumps are actually quite high to very high. So let's have a look at the information we don't have. So I don't know about weekly progressions or monthly progressions. And if you've seen any of my videos before, then there need to be progressions in volume or intensity somewhere in the training program. So normally you start, generally speaking, a training program with low intensity and the increases in volume, and then later volume goes down and intensity goes up. I don't know whether this is the case in this program or not. It's not visible from the information I have here. The next one is the training frequency. How many sessions are supposed to be done in a week or a month? I don't know. So that's also something I cannot comment on. Rest periods. Rest periods are very important. Again, I've spoken about that before. Intra-serial rest periods, so the rest period within a set. So for example, if we look at exercise 1, the depth jump, if we look at exercise number 8, the single leg box jumps, there are intra-serial rest periods, because if you look at the depth jumps, you're on an object, jump down with a short contact onto an object. So you need to get off that object, walk around, and get back onto the object you're jumping off. There is an intra-serial rest period. Whilst if you look at an exercise like number 9, continuous squat jumps, there will be no intraserial rest. There's also no information about the interserial rest, so the rest between the sets, so after the completion of set number 1 and the initiation of set number 2, how many seconds or minutes should you rest? And there's also no indication, or I don't have this indication, of what is the number of, number is wrong, what is the rest period between the exercises. So once you've completed 3 sets of 25 depth jump, when do you start with exercise number 2? Next point, sport specificity. So basketball is a sport that has a high jump volume anyway. The nature of the sport has high jump volumes, whether it's maximal jumps or sub-maximal jumps. There are a big amount of jumps in the basketball training itself. So you need to think about, if you are engaging in a plyometric training program, that this plyometric training program needs to set an additional stimulus. So if you just, I make up the number of jumps now, if you do 200 jumps in your basketball training for rebounding or layups or whatever you're going to do, if you're totaling 200 jumps, how much will these additional jumps actually do? So then you again have to think about, these jumps need to be either at a higher intensity, or certain jumps you don't do in your practice. So again, think about the additional stimulus you want to set with the plyometric program that you don't already get from your sport-specific training. Age is definitely a consideration. We spoke about, or I said it's 16-year-old male. So 16 years of age, you are most likely, if you're normally developed, at the end of the pubertal period. So within the pubertal period, the body experiences rapid growth, that is a bit earlier than 16 years, but also a rapid deceleration of growth. So what that means is that the body actually in this period is very susceptible to niggles and slide injuries. So if there's a period where we need to be a bit careful, it's the pubertal period where we need to cut down a little bit on volume and intensity to allow the normal adaptations or the normal growth process to occur without interferences of too much training load or whatever it is. And that brings me to the point, the loading needs to be based on the development. So if you're really thinking of high volume of jumps, that should be probably a little bit later in the athletic life. So where you want to set an additional stimulus by high training volumes, and maybe not that early. My 5 cents. Let's wrap it up. So the rep ranges seem to be quite high, and it utilizes not only the ATP-CP system. The training volume also seems to be quite high to me, and we need more information on progressions, weekly progressions or monthly progressions, or even within a week maybe. Training frequency, how often it needs to be done. And the rest periods, we discussed that intraserial within the set, interserial between the sets, and between the exercises if needed. I hope I answered all the questions that came up within this question. If there are further questions, please comment below. If there are any other questions, also please feel free to comment below, and I will answer it in one of the next videos.